welcome to Unit 3. This is a chapter on congruence. Today we're specifically talking about congruent triangles. So, under congruent triangles, we have triangles with the same size and shape. This means all corresponding parts are referring to sides and angles. Those are the parts of a triangle, or sides and angles, are congruent. They have to be exactly the same. That's what congruent means. Congruency statements is when triangles are congruent, we can write what's called a congruency statement. In this box over here is the congruent statement. It says triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. So when you're looking at a picture, you'll notice A has a little mark in the corner, and D has the same little mark in the corner. So that means angle A is congruent to angle D. So when you're writing it, if the A goes first, then you have to put the D first in that triangle. They have to match up identical. So B has two little lines, E has two little lines. So B and E have to match up in the same place in the congruency statement. A valid congruency statement must match all corresponding angles and sides together. So sides would be like segment AB is equal to segment DE, if you look at the marks in the picture. Alright, CPCTC. This is an abbreviation you're going to get real used to in this chapter. It stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So all those C means corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. If we know that two triangles are congruent, then you know all their corresponding parts are congruent. So if triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, then we know A is congruent to D, B is congruent to E, C is congruent to F. Even without having a picture, because of this right here, corresponding parts are congruent, then you know each part of that triangle is congruent. Alright, list all the corresponding angles and sides given in this congruency statement. So, here, I don't know, when I downloaded this, printed it from when I created it in Google, for some reason it put it down here, is the congruency statement. So, it's hard to see that. To break that down, if you do the individual letters, J and P represent angles. So we're going to say angle J is congruent to angle P. The next letters we have are K and Q. And the last letters were L and R. So those represent different angles in the triangle. On the same idea, we're going to talk about sides. Sides are two letters to make up a segment. So we're going to say segment JK would be equal or congruent to segment PQ. Then you go to the next two letters. So segment KL is congruent to QR. And the last one, like if I do the first and the last, segment JL is congruent to segment, make PR. And if you put like KJ, then you would just want to write QP. The order that you write them, we typically want to try and match up specific letters, so it's kind of important that we write them in the same direction. Alright, write another valid congruent statement. So given these letters, we just want to rearrange them to make another type of congruent statement. So let's say I just start with the P this time. Let's say I do PMK. Same triangle. I just started with the P and then went PMK. Doesn't matter how you want to start the first one. Whatever order you do the first one in, you want to do your second one in the same order. Well, that's kind of strange. Oh, that is for this. That is for that one. Okay, scratch that out. It's still true. this problem, I don't know why we had all the extra spaces. This was a box on the side on mine. So this goes with this question. So triangle JKL, so let's do KLJ, is congruent to triangle say KL, so I'm going to do QRP. Okay, so this one's another way to write the triangle, so you just rearrange the order of the first one and then match its corresponding parts in the second one. These directions go with the next example, so I'm going to write them at the top of this example since mine printed on a separate page. The directions say triangle KPM is congruent to triangle AYC. It says use this information to complete the following statements. Like I said, I don't know why when I printed that I went to the wrong page, but so the reason they give you this in the directions is because sometimes this picture might seem obvious which angle matches which angle, but if the picture's it's rotated, it's flipped, it's different things that it might be hard to tell what angle matches. So that's why they give it to you in the directions. Or mark the picture. So segment KM, you look up here, K and M are the first and last, so that would match up with AC. Okay, so I would try this on your own, pause the video, see what you can do, and then turn the video back on in a couple minutes and make sure you got them all right. Okay, so I went through and I matched up all the letters like angle Y. Y is in the middle, so it matches up with P because P is in the middle. Again, you can look at the picture and see angle Y looks the same size as angle P, but this tells us more specifically exactly what's going to match up, even if they don't happen to give you a picture. Alright, now we're going to talk about there are these 5 different ways to prove triangles are congruent. We're not doing proofs today, but in general, this is how you can prove something is congruent. One way is called SSS, for side, side, side. That would mean all corresponding sides are congruent. It doesn't mean that it's an equilateral triangle. It means like this side has to be congruent to a side in that triangle. So not all the sides are equal to each other, but they have a corresponding part in the other triangle that they match up with. So all 3 sides are shown congruent to the 3 sides in the other triangle. They match up, they pair up. Okay, 2 sides and an angle included. So side, angle, side has to be 2 sides. Okay, and the angle in between them. So side, angle, side. We wouldn't go this way, because if you go this way, there's nothing marked here and there's nothing marked there. So you want to go in the direction of whichever the next marking is. So this side corresponds to that angle to that angle, and that side to that side. So that's side, angle, side to prove that those would be congruent. Okay, next one's called angle, side, angle. This is when you have 2 angles and the side between them. So there's 2 angles, and it has to be the side between them. So they have to match up with their corresponding parts, and it's between, side is between the 2 angles. This one is called angle, angle, side. 2 angles and the side opposite them. So if you did an angle here, an angle here, angle, angle, and then a side. So this one's not the side between them, it's you go, and if, let's say, you have a picture like that in the test and you wrote side, angle, angle, instead of angle, angle, side, that's okay. You still have them in the correct order, you just kind of wrote it backwards, but it means the same thing. So angle, angle, side, or side, angle, angle, they're still in like in order that proves that triangles are congruent. The next one is called hypotenuse leg. So you think about the only time you ever have a hypotenuse is if you have a 90-degree angle. So you can't have this one unless there's a right angle in the picture. It's the only time you have hypotenuse leg. So a hypotenuse is located across from the right angle. So the other two sides in a right triangle are called the legs. So you would need to mark one of the legs and the hypotenuse. So every one of these had 3 letters, except for the last one only has 2 letters. Because you're marking a hypotenuse and a leg, but the third item that it has to have would be the 90-degree corner. So it technically needs 3 things, they just don't write that in the initials. But you can't have a hypotenuse or a leg, or you can't have a hypotenuse if you don't have that right angle. So that's our third thing, because all of them take 3 things to identify them as ability to prove congruent. So these next ones, we're going to look at some pictures and see what they marked. In this picture, there's a couple things, 2 assumptions you can make from a picture. One, that vertical angles are congruent. And 2, if they share a side, it has to be congruent. The only other weird one I really saw that wasn't like marked on there would be if it's a like parallel lines, then you could use anything you've learned about parallel lines, like corresponding angles, alternate interior angles. So I guess we could put that as a third thing. All parallel line angle properties can be used. All parallel line angles can be used. Which would be, the ones that would be concurrent would be alternate interior, alternate exterior, or corresponding. Mostly alternate interior and corresponding are the only ones I've seen, pretty much so. Alright, so in this picture we have a shared side. If they share a side, you automatically know that's congruent to itself. They don't have to mark that. This one we have a 90-degree angle, and we have another leg, or side. So since we have the side opposite the 90 degrees, that's going to be your hypotenuse, and that would be your leg. So we'll call this one HL. In this picture, we have a side mark. They share the side in the middle, so we know it's equal to itself. And then they have this angle over here. So do we have any that has side, side, angle, or angle, side, side? Looking at our choices above, this is not an option, so these are not congruent. Okay. I sometimes just put S's and A's next to what I have just to kind of see, okay, were the S's next to each other, the A's next to each other, was the A between the S's, all those types of things. The reason this is not congruent is because if, let's say, this angle was bigger than this angle, it would make things not match up correctly. So it either has to be the angle between them, or you're going to need 2 angles, basically. Alright, C and D are on the next side. Alright, so this one we have a mark, so I'll just make them a little brighter. And the other thing that we have that's not marked is this. Just seeing if you remember what that's called when you have like a diagonal line like that. These are called vertical angles. And vertical angles are congruent, so I can mark those. That's one of those assumption things, even though it's not drawn, you can assume those are equal. So if you follow in this triangle, I have an angle, a side, and an angle, so we're going to classify this as angle, side, angle. it matches up with an angle, side, and angle on that one. Okay, this one we have vertical angles again in this picture. You know vertical angles are congruent. So we have a side, an angle, and an angle. So out of our choices, side, angle, angle, or angle, side, angle, angle, side is the same thing. So these are congruent. When you get to the quiz on this, it'll say yes or no, are they congruent, and then to tell me, explain to me by writing those letters. So these would all be yes, and then this would be why I would know it. Yes by angle, angle, side. Okay, this one. This one, you have 3 angles. And 3 angles is not a choice because something can have all the same angles that match up with something else that has all the same angles, but they don't have to be the same size. A situation like that, if you think about an equilateral triangle, there's lots of equilateral triangles that are not the same size. They can have the same angles and not be the same size. You can have a very small triangle with all 60-degree angles, or you can have a really big triangle with all 60-degree angles. So if they have all the angles that are equal, they can be in proportion. They don't have to be congruent. And we'll get to that, I think, next chapter on similar figures versus congruent figures. So this one is no, it's not congruent. So things have the same angles only, are in proportion with each other, not congruent to each other. Okay, if I follow this, we have a side, an angle, and a side. Again, I didn't go around this direction because there's nothing marked to the right of that letter. So I want to go the other way, and this would be side, angle, side. Alright, the next one, they tell you what it is. We want it to be side, side, side. State additional information needed to prove the triangles are congruent. Now we automatically know TV is equal to itself, and they didn't have to tell us that because it's a shared side. So we need something else. They've got one angle, they have the shared side, one side, they have the shared side, so we need a third side to have side, side, side. So the missing information would be UT needs to be congruent to LT. Again, if I pick U to start with, then I need to pick L to start with because those 2 angles are going to match up. This one, they want angle, angle, side. It looks like we have a side, we have a vertical angle, so I need another angle. Okay, so if you put the angle here, that would be angle, side, angle. But we want angle, angle, side, so I need to put this angle down here. So I need to prove or say that angle V would have to be congruent to angle I in order to prove angle, angle, side. I'm trying to figure out what's missing. This last ones, we have angle, side, angles, what they want. We have an angle, we have a side, so we are missing another A. We're missing another angle. So if you have angle, side, we need this angle here to be congruent. So we would need angle C to be congruent to angle X. That would be what's missing to get angle, side, angle. Alright, the last one we want to prove hypotenuse leg. They have the 90-degree angle. They have a shared side, so I don't have to write those down. What I need to do is figure out, okay, what am I missing? It looks like I am missing the hypotenuse. It's not marked, because across from your 90 degrees is called your hypotenuse. So we need those 2 segments to be equal if we're going to do hypotenuse leg. So I say segment IH needs to be congruent to segment, let's see, I would match up with M. So MH. So watch the way you write them. They're going to give you 2 things, and you need to identify what would be the third thing that's missing to prove it that the way they're requesting. The other ones is they're going to give you a picture, and wants you to figure out, okay, given this picture, can they be proven congruent, yes or no? If they can't, then you write no. If they can, you write yes, and then you tell me how. Using, when I say how, I mean out of these 5 choices, which one is it?